The Galactic Council chamber was never silent, but tonight it was suffocating in its stillness. No debates, no translations, only the hum of fear. They all stared at the holodeble in the center, displaying reports compiled from 36 military sectors. Every one of them had one recurring element: Human General Rail. The name was a whisper, a shadow, a specter that had emerged across front lines and left nothing but disorder. No confirmed visual, no captured transmissions, only aftermath. Fleets turned to drifting wrecks, planets abandoned mid-occupation, strike teams gone dark without a trace. The Tormac had lost an entire orbital battalion in a single night. The Brixhall suffered a psychological collapse after a month-long campaign of illusions and supply line sabotage. Rail was there every time. The Gulric's prime speaker thudded a fist against the table. This phantom has disrupted galactic cohesion. If it is a human, it must be eradicated. No one objected. Even the peace delegates said nothing. The council did not agree on many things, but on this, there was only one conclusion. General Rail had become too dangerous to remain alive. A plan was devised in silence, not a declaration of war, not a planetary siege. No, this would be surgical, quiet, denied if necessary. The Council's elite covert strike unit, the Shroud Claws, was given a singular mission: locate and eliminate the human general. Their last trace placed Rail on a forested moon orbiting an abandoned mining world in the Keshri Rim. No signals, no installations, just a name carved into a rusted beacon: Rail. The Shroud Claws descended during the night cycle. 5 of the deadliest operatives drawn from 5 species, each with unique gifts: telepathic interference, light-bending camo, anti-biological weaponry. They landed without a ripple. No alarms, no resistance, only the dense, silent dark. The terrain was overgrown. Trees twisted unnaturally, shaped by centuries of atmospheric decay and radiation storms. The ground was soft, damp, tracks scattered, human-sized. The team moved with clinical precision. No chatter, no mistakes. They split into pairs. One vanished before the second step. The other pair tried to signal back. Only static answered. Light dampeners failed. Heat scanners began showing false images. Something mimicked their presence, mirroring movements a half-second behind. 2 hours later, only one remained. Operative Zeldran, half visible through adaptive camouflage, crept toward what appeared to be a human campsite. Long abandoned, it still held makeshift tents, sealed ration boxes, and handwritten notes secured in plastic cases. One read: "We know they'll come. We always knew. Let them." Zeldran felt the pressure shift. The temperature didn't drop, but his instincts screamed predator. Not an animal, not a drone, something else. Then he heard a voice, perfectly human, quiet and controlled. "You weren't sent here to kill me. You were sent to kill what you fear I represent." He turned, slowly, and saw her. No armor, no weapon drawn. Human, average height, scar across her left cheek, unblinking eyes. "General Rail, why do you think you were chosen, assassin?" she asked. Zeldran activated his neural blade. She didn't flinch. "Because they trust you. Because they fear me more than they trust each other." He lunged. The blade met empty air. Her voice came again, this time behind him. "You brought war to our doorstep, thinking we hadn't lived in it. You walk in shadows. We were born in them." Zeldran froze. Something about the ground, the patterns of light. None of it was random. He was standing inside a trap, not physical, but mental, mapped for him, predicted. "You can return to them," she said. "But you won't bring comfort. Only more questions." He backed away. His HUD scrambled. Coordinates shifted. When he finally reached the extraction point, a shuttle was already waiting. No comms, no lights, just one item inside. His armor, etched with a single phrase: "You never understood what we are." They let him live. A message. Back at the council, silence reigned once more. The operative spoke only once during the debrief. "She knew everything about us, and she chose not to kill me." The Tormac War minister hissed. She allowed you to live as a threat. No, the operative replied. She allowed me to live as a mirror. They reviewed the data. Biological scans confirmed she was human. Female. Age estimate. Late 30s. Background classified. Known assets. None. Known bases. 0. Confirmed kills. Disputed. The council debated again. Strike plans were drawn. Scorched moon proposals floated. But they all knew the truth now. They hadn't tried to eliminate a commander. They had tried to assassinate a principal. One of the youngest delegates, barely accepted into the council months prior, asked a question that made the chamber still again. If she knew we were coming, why didn't she kill all of them? The answer came not from intelligence reports, but from one of the journals retrieved by the operative. They think fear is a weapon. But humans have used fear so long, we learn to reshape it. We don't need to kill to win. We only need them to see us. And then they unravel themselves. No one spoke for a full hour, and when the council dismissed that night, nothing had been decided, not because they lacked options, but because for the first time, the threat they faced was not military. It was conceptual. General Rail had shown them what a human truly was, and they could no longer sleep comfortably in the dark. A week passed since the Shroud Claws returned shattered and silent. The Galactic Council's upper chambers leaked no statements, but the inner circles knew. General Rail was real, and she was watching. The Council's high strategists convened with select military advisors in off-the-record channels. What emerged was a Tempest Protocol, a 3-phase operation designed to corner Rail without triggering an interspecies war. Phase 1 began with intelligence sweeps. Every fringe colony with unexplained disappearances over the last 10 cycles was flagged. Mining worlds that registered ghost power surges were cross-referenced. Refugee ships from past conflicts were interrogated under medical pretense. Rail's movement formed a pattern. She circled the council periphery like a predator forcing prey into the open. Phase 2 targeted sympathy networks. Across half the sectors, human sympathizers were rounded up. Some had never met Rail but shared her ideology. Resistance through asymmetry, subversion through precision. The council labeled them as seditious vectors. Some cooperated. Most did not. A few disappeared, leaving behind hollow recordings of Rail's teachings, not instructions but provocations. You don't win by fighting harder. You win when the enemy can't tell who you are. The message spread faster than containment could manage. On backwater moons and crumbling outposts, minor insurrections began, citing Rail as inspiration. The Council's public relations corps flooded channels with counter-narratives, labeling Rail as a destabilizer, a terrorist, a human aberration. It did nothing. The more they pushed the narrative, the more she became a legend. Phase 3 was activation. A weapon had been in development, Project Lancer, designed for rapid atmospheric penetration and intelligent target acquisition. It operated autonomously, adapting mid-mission. The warhead wasn't nuclear, kinetic, or biological. It was psychological. A multi-spectrum neural signal designed to trigger collapse in human neural patterns. Tested in secret on human prisoners, it left subjects catatonic, lost in loops of false memory and dreamlike terror. The device was launched toward the coordinates gathered from the Shroud Claw's failed mission. It landed. It activated. It deployed waves across the entire moon. It found no one, but the signal didn't stop. It returned, looped back, somehow hijacked, broadcast in fragments across dozens of military channels. The signal now whispered Rail's voice. They built a weapon of fear, but forgot humans live with it every day. Military stations reported hallucinations. Some saw lost comrades. Others heard impossible messages. One high-ranking general jumped from a tower, screaming about shadows that knew his thoughts. It was never confirmed if Rail was there to twist a weapon, or if it had only done what human trauma always did, awaken memory. By now, something deeper had shifted. The Council's elite officers, the ones closest to strategy, began showing signs of anxiety disorder. Not from a toxin, from anticipation. Rail had reversed their entire command structure. They no longer operated on objective threats, but on the possibility of her presence. Paranoia replaced order. In the third cycle of the month, an encrypted package arrived in the Central Council AI core. It bypassed every security protocol, embedding itself not as a virus, but as a question. Who trained Rail? There was no traceable origin. Council historians dug deep. Records from Earth's post-unification military archives had been scrubbed decades ago. What remained hinted at shadow programs, war academies that required no rank, only survival. Rail had never been appointed. She had earned her name by defeating others who had already taken it. No medals, no planetary command, just a chain of field victories without ceremony. The closest translation of her Earth file came down to a single tag, null directive operative, status unbound. They realized then she wasn't a general by authority. She was a general because others followed, not out of duty, but belief. There was no rank to revoke, no unit to disband, only an idea that kept walking. Desperation followed. The Council activated their last resort interrogators, psychic siphons, memory extractors. They tore through prisoners' minds. They found fragments, Rail training children to adapt to zero-gravity firefights using only tether rope and instinct. Rail teaching dissidents to dismantle weapons and rebuild them into farming equipment. Then reverse the process in 30 seconds. Rail offering mercy before violence, and violence without hesitation when refused. Some saw her cry. Others never saw her speak. The turning point came not from a battle, but a silence. One of the Council's strongest fortresses, the orbital Citadel YRX-9, stopped transmitting. No alerts, no calls for aid, just void. When scouts arrived, they found the station intact. No damage, power system stable, but the personnel, every last one, had locked themselves in private chambers. Not harmed, not attacked, but unreachable. Each logged into simulation loops. Voluntarily. The AI couldn't override it. One phrase kept appearing in their logs. If Rail comes, I must be elsewhere. By then, her presence had become cultural, not just among humans, but other species who saw the cracks in Council order. They didn't rise up in war. They stopped participating. Trade slowed. Command chains broke. Orders were heard, but not obeyed. Entire fleets drifted in strategic stasis, unwilling to move until certainty returned. It didn't. The Council summoned human envoys, demanded answers. Earth's representative, a frail, retired linguist, offered none. Only a story. There was once a human who survived 15 years alone after the collapse of Orbital 3. She didn't become a monster. She became a mirror. When the next ship came, they saw themselves in her, and they couldn't look for long. Rail is not your enemy. She's your reflection in war. The Council dismissed him, but the seed remained. A final operation was proposed. Not military. Symbolic. They would offer an open meeting. Invite Rail. Publicly. Let the galaxy see they had no fear. A message was sent. Not encoded. Not concealed. To General Rail, you are offered audience. Not surrender. Not allegiance. A chance to speak. Before history decides. No reply came for 3 days. On the 4th, a small drone entered the Council chamber. It carried no weapon, only a hollow projector. Rail's image appeared. Real time, she stood in a gray tunic. No insignia, no expression, just words. I accept. Transmission cut. Within hours, security doubled. Analysts scanned every corridor for sabotage. Internal reviews began for every known staffer. The Council hall was sealed in a security cocoon. And still, they didn't know if she was already inside. She had made her move, and now they waited for words or for war. And no one, not the bravest, not the cruelest, could say which would be worse. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with a silence that made even breath feel like a trespass. Representatives of 67 species sat motionless, waiting. Surveillance feeds confirmed the hall was secure, air composition balanced, electromagnetic scans clear. And yet, every mind in the room expected something to fail. Rail walked in unannounced. No transport, no escort. One moment the chamber was still. The next, she stood at the central platform, facing the high seats. She carried no weapon, wore no armor, just a gray tunic and worn boots dusted with the traces of travel. No one saw her arrive, but no one doubted she was real. The council speaker stood to speak. Rael raised one hand. No speeches, only truth. The speaker hesitated, nodded, and gestured for her to continue. Rael's voice was calm, clipped neutral. You called me here to speak, so I'll speak. You think I'm a threat because I fight without an army, command without a flag, and win without a fleet. But you misunderstand what I am. I'm not here to take power. I'm here because you lost the right to hold it. Murmurs sparked, but no one interrupted. You rule by policy and proclamation, but you don't listen. You calculate loss in percentages, not lives. You send ships to maintain order, but ignore the chaos that made order necessary. You respond to unrest with force, not with questions. She walked slowly, looking each representative in the eyes as she passed. You created the world I was born into. A world where colonies starved while you debated tariffs. Where rescue fleets were delayed because protocol outweighed urgency. Where veterans of your wars returned forgotten because you had moved to the next crisis. She stopped before the human envoy, and you thought we would serve that system forever. The silence deepened. Not fearful, ashamed. Rael turned and faced the chamber again. I didn't rebel. I adapted. I didn't plot. I survived. I didn't gather power. It gathered to me because you left a void. The speaker stood again. What do you want, Rael? To lead? To rule the council? Rael shook her head. I want you to feel what the outer systems felt when your fleets passed them by. I want you to understand what your decisions cost those who never had seats here. I want you to realize that governance without empathy is not order. It's tyranny. The Trinari delegate, a cold strategist responsible for half the suppression campaigns, stood. You asked for empathy. Empathy doesn't secure planets. Empathy doesn't end wars. Rael's reply was instant. Empathy doesn't end wars, no, but it keeps them from starting. You suppress revolts that could have been avoided with water shipments and medicine. You built dreadnoughts while food ran dry. You used fear like it was currency. She paused. You created me, not Earth, not humanity. You. The revelation landed harder than a declaration of war. Because it wasn't blame, it was truth. The council hadn't faced consequences in centuries. Rael was the sum of their neglect. Then she offered something no one expected. I don't want destruction. I want reconstruction. Not under your order, not under mine, but together. The council cannot continue as it is. It must change or fall. A ripple moved through the chamber. The speaker leaned forward. And if we refuse? Rael stepped down from platform. Slowly. Then I disappear. I won't attack. I won't destroy. I won't need to. The galaxy has seen the gap between what you promise and what you protect. If you do nothing, others will rise. And they won't speak first. They'll strike. No threats, just inevitability. The council requested recess. 12 hours. No one left the chamber. Delegates debated. Some accused Rael of blackmail. Others called her a prophet. More called her necessary. When the session resumed, the speaker stood. We will establish a reconstruction committee, independent of council control, audited by all member species, guided by those directly affected. You may lead it, but you do not command it. Rael gave a single nod. Then begin. She turned to leave. The council offered her housing, rank, titles. She declined them all. 3 weeks later, mining drones in the Goraz Rift found a message burned into a steel wall. Justice begins where comfort ends. Systems once forgotten now received shipments. Suppressed histories were unsealed. Former rebels were brought in as planners. No blood was shed. But across the stars, flags came down and new banners were raised, not for nations but for people. Rael remained unseen. Rumors placed her in a farming vessel, teaching gravity adaptation to orphans. Others claimed she lived aboard a drifting library ship, cataloging lost wars. No verification ever came, but her name endured, not as a title, as a reminder that when the powerful forget the cost of their decisions, Someone will remember. And remembering was the first weapon. The galaxy changed, not by decree, not by force, but by fear transformed into awareness. By a lone human who demanded no throne, issued no conquest, but left every ruler with a single, burning question. What if Rael returns?